Every morning, millions of people wake up carrying an invisible companion they've never formally met. This companion influences their choice of clothes, their tone in conversations, their reaction to criticism, and their capacity for joy. It determines whether they approach new opportunities with excitement or terror, whether they trust their instincts or second-guess every decision, and whether they feel deserving of love or constantly work to earn it. Carl Jung called this companion the inner child, but his understanding went far deeper than the popular psychology interpretations we often encounter today. For Jung, the inner child wasn't just a therapeutic concept or a nostalgic reference to simpler times. It was what he termed a living archetypal constellation, an active autonomous aspect of the psyche that continues to operate throughout our entire lives, shaping our responses to the world in ways we rarely recognize. Jung spent decades studying how childhood experiences create what he called feeling-toned complexes, clusters of emotions, memories, and behavioral patterns that operate like separate personalities within our unconscious mind. These complexes don't just influence our behavior, they direct it, often in ways that seem mysterious or self-defeating to our conscious awareness. But here's what makes Jung's approach revolutionary. He discovered that these childhood patterns, no matter how deeply embedded, remain accessible to conscious intervention throughout our lives. The neural pathways formed in early childhood continue to be plastic, responsive to new experiences and conscious attention. This means that the wounded child within us can actually be healed, not through regression or dramatic catharsis, but through consistent, gentle daily practices that provide what Jung called corrective emotional experiences. Modern neuroscience has validated Jung's insights in remarkable ways. Research shows that practices involving self-compassion, mindful awareness, and consistent emotional regulation actually change brain structure, strengthening the prefrontal cortex while calming the amygdala's stress responses. The same neural mechanisms that created our original childhood adaptations can be recruited to create new, healthier patterns of response. The challenge that stops most people from successfully healing their inner child isn't lack of understanding or motivation. It's the overwhelming feeling that emerges when they begin this work. Suddenly, emotions that have been suppressed for decades start surfacing. Old wounds that seemed healed begin to ache again. The very act of paying attention to their inner child seems to activate more pain than they feel equipped to handle. If you've started inner child work, only to find yourself feeling more unstable rather than more healed, if you've wondered how to care for your wounded inner aspects while still meeting your adult responsibilities, if you've struggled to find sustainable ways to integrate emotional healing into your daily life, then understanding Jung's approach to what he called the care of the soul could transform your entire relationship with your own healing process. Before we explore these profound insights that have helped thousands create lasting transformation through gentle daily practices, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications if you value depth over quick fixes. This channel is dedicated to exploring the psychological truths that can genuinely change how you experience your inner world. Now let's discover what Carl Jung understood about transforming inner child healing from an overwhelming ordeal into a sustainable daily practice that honors both your wounds and your wholeness. Jung's revolutionary insight about the inner child begins with his understanding of what he called psychological time. Unlike chronological time, which moves linearly from past to present to future, psychological time is cyclical and layered. The child you once were doesn't exist only in memory. That child continues to live within your psyche, experiencing the present moment through the emotional lens of their original experiences. This is why certain situations can trigger responses that seem disproportionate to current circumstances. When your boss criticizes your work and you feel not just disappointed but devastated, you're not overreacting. You're experiencing a collision between psychological time zones where your adult self encounters a situation that your inner child interprets through the emotional reality of their original experiences with authority figures. Jung discovered that most psychological symptoms aren't really symptoms at all, they're communications from these different temporal aspects of ourselves. The anxiety that seems to come from nowhere might be your inner child's way of expressing fear that was never allowed to be felt or processed. The perfectionism that exhausts you might be their strategy for avoiding the criticism or rejection they once experienced. Understanding this changes everything about how we approach inner child healing. Instead of trying to eliminate these responses or overcome them through willpower, Jung's approach involves learning to communicate consciously with these different aspects of ourselves, providing them with the understanding and care they've been seeking all along. The daily practice aspect emerges from Jung's observation that healing happens through relationship, and relationships require consistent attention to develop and maintain. Just as you wouldn't expect to build trust with another person through occasional intense conversations, your relationship with your inner child develops through regular, gentle contact rather than dramatic interventions. Jung's method of active imagination provides the foundation for this daily practice. Active imagination involves consciously engaging with unconscious contents, not by trying to control or direct them, but by creating space for dialogue and mutual understanding. When applied to inner child work, this might involve daily check-ins with your younger self, asking how they're feeling, what they need, or what's making them feel unsafe. But Jung emphasized that active imagination must be approached with what he called respectful curiosity, rather than therapeutic agenda. You're not trying to fix your inner child or convince them to feel differently. You're simply offering consistent presence and attention, allowing whatever needs to be communicated to emerge naturally. The overwhelm that many people experience when beginning inner child work often comes from approaching it with adult expectations and timelines. We want to understand everything immediately, resolve all our patterns quickly, and see measurable progress on our schedule. But the inner child operates on different rhythms, responding to emotional safety and consistency rather than efficiency or productivity. Creating a sustainable daily practice begins with what Jung called lowering the threshold of consciousness. This means becoming more sensitive to subtle internal signals throughout the day, rather than waiting for dramatic emotional episodes to capture your attention. You might notice a slight tightening in your chest during a difficult conversation, a familiar feeling of smallness when someone raises their voice, or an unexplained surge of excitement when you encounter something creative or beautiful. These subtle signals are your inner child's ongoing commentary on your daily experiences. By paying gentle attention to them throughout the day, you begin to develop what Jung called conscious relationship with the unconscious. This relationship becomes the foundation for all sustainable healing work. Jung observed that the inner child communicates through what he termed symbolic language emotions, sensations, images, and impulses that carry meaning beyond their surface appearance. Learning to decode this symbolic language becomes an essential skill for anyone wanting to develop a daily healing practice that actually creates lasting change. For example, the sudden urge to eat something sweet when you're not physically hungry might be your inner child's way of asking for comfort or nurturing. The impulse to clean your house when you're feeling anxious might represent their need for a sense of control and safety. The unexpected tears that arise when you see something beautiful might be their way of expressing the wonder and sensitivity that had to be suppressed for survival. Rather than judging these impulses or trying to eliminate them, Jung's approach involves treating them as valuable information about your inner child's current needs and emotional state. This creates opportunities throughout each day to provide microdoses of the care and attention that support ongoing healing. The practice of emotional validation becomes central to sustainable inner child healing. Validation doesn't mean indulging every impulse or emotion. It means acknowledging that your emotional responses make sense, given your history and current circumstances, even when they seem inconvenient or disproportionate to others. When you notice yourself feeling triggered by something that seems minor to everyone else, instead of criticizing yourself for being too sensitive, you might pause and recognize, this situation is activating something from my past. It makes sense that my body would have this response. This kind of internal validation helps your inner child feel heard and understood rather than judged or rushed. Jung's concept of holding the tension of opposites becomes crucial for integrating inner child healing into adult life. You learn to hold space for both your vulnerability and your strength, your neediness and your independence, your emotional responses and your rational understanding. This isn't about finding balance, it's about developing the capacity to contain seeming contradictions without needing to resolve them immediately. This might look like acknowledging, part of me feels scared and needs reassurance, and part of me is capable and confident, without trying to eliminate either aspect, or recognizing I'm having an emotional reaction that belongs to my past, and I can also make conscious choices based on present moment reality. This capacity to hold complexity prevents the inner child from feeling rejected when adult responsibilities require your attention. The somatic dimension of daily inner child healing was something Jung understood intuitively, though modern trauma research has provided the neurobiological explanation for why body-based practices are so effective. The nervous system patterns formed in childhood continue to operate below conscious awareness, creating what Jung called autonomous complexes that activate specific physical responses to perceived threats. Daily practices that involve gentle body awareness help establish new patterns of nervous system regulation. This might include simple breathing exercises that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, progressive muscle relaxation that releases chronic tension patterns, or mindful movement that helps discharge stored activation from past experiences. The key is approaching these practices as communications with your inner child, rather than techniques for achieving specific outcomes. When you place your hand on your heart during a moment of anxiety, you're not just activating the vagus nerve, you're demonstrating to your inner child that they're worthy of comfort and care. Jung's understanding of dreams becomes particularly relevant for daily inner child healing practice. Dreams often contain direct communications from wounded aspects of the psyche, offering both information about what needs attention and guidance about how to proceed. Many people find that as they develop more conscious relationship with their inner child, their dreams become more vivid and meaningful. Keeping a simple dream journal and paying particular attention to any dream figures that seem young, vulnerable, or in need of help can provide ongoing guidance for your healing process. Jung emphasized that dream work shouldn't become another obligation or pressure, but rather a gentle way of staying attuned to the deeper movements of your psyche. The creative dimension of inner child healing offers natural opportunities for daily practice that don't feel like work. Jung observed that creative expression provides a direct pathway for communication with unconscious contents, bypassing the rational mind's tendency to analyze or control. This doesn't require artistic talent or elaborate projects. Even a few minutes of doodling, humming, dancing to music you love, or writing stream of consciousness thoughts can provide your inner child with opportunities for expression and play that may have been limited in your actual childhood. The key is approaching creativity without performance pressure or judgment, simply offering your inner child space to emerge and be seen. Jung's concept of the transcendent function describes the psyche's natural capacity for healing and growth that emerges when we learn to work with, rather than against, our unconscious processes. In daily inner child healing, the transcendent function manifests as moments of spontaneous insight, unexpected emotional release, or sudden clarity about patterns that have been confusing. These moments of transcendence can't be forced or scheduled, but they're more likely to emerge when you've created consistent conditions of safety and attention for your inner child. This might happen during meditation, while walking in nature, in the middle of creative activity, or even during routine tasks when your conscious mind is relaxed and receptive. The practice of conscious communication with your inner child can be integrated into daily life in subtle but powerful ways. Instead of waiting for formal meditation or journaling time, you can develop the habit of checking in with your inner child throughout the day, asking simple questions like, "How are we feeling right now?" or "What do we need in this moment?" This internal dialogue helps prevent the accumulation of unexpressed emotions and unmet needs that can lead to overwhelming episodes. When you notice tension building, instead of pushing through or trying to eliminate it, you can pause and ask your inner child what's happening, offering reassurance or comfort as needed. Jung observed that healing happens through what he called symbolic acts, small, meaningful gestures that communicate care and attention to unconscious aspects of the psyche. These might include lighting a candle before difficult conversations, keeping a photo of yourself as a child where you can see it, or creating small rituals around transitions between different parts of your day. These acts aren't magical or superstitious. They're practical ways of communicating to your inner child that they're remembered and valued throughout your daily activities. The nervous system responds to these symbolic communications, gradually learning that it's safe to relax and trust. The integration of inner child healing with work and professional responsibilities requires what Jung called conscious differentiation, the ability to recognize when you're operating from childhood patterns versus adult capabilities, and to respond appropriately to each situation. This might mean recognizing when your perfectionism is being driven by your inner child's fear of criticism and consciously choosing to complete work to appropriate standards rather than impossible ones. Or noticing when you're people-pleasing in professional situations out of childhood fears of rejection and instead expressing your authentic opinions with appropriate boundaries. The goal isn't to eliminate your inner child's influence on your professional life, but to ensure that their needs for safety and acceptance are being met consciously rather than driving unconscious behaviors that may not serve your adult goals. Jung's understanding of projection becomes crucial for sustainable inner child healing. Often, we unconsciously expect others to provide what our inner child never received, leading to disappointment and relationship difficulties when others can't fulfill unconscious expectations they were never aware of. Daily practice involves gradually learning to recognize these projections and taking responsibility for meeting your own inner child's needs rather than expecting others to do it for you. This doesn't mean becoming completely self-sufficient. It means developing the capacity to provide primary emotional care to yourself while also being able to receive genuine support from others. The community dimension of inner child healing was something Jung valued highly. While much of the work is internal and individual, healing is supported by relationships with others who can witness your process, offer understanding, and reflect back your worth and humanity. This might involve therapy, support groups, trusted friendships, or simply being around people who allow you to be authentic rather than always having to perform competence. Daily practice can include reaching out for support when you need it, allowing others to see your vulnerability when appropriate, and offering the same kind of witnessing and acceptance to others who are on their own healing journeys. Jung believed that individual healing contributes to collective healing, as each person who learns to treat themselves with compassion becomes more capable of offering genuine compassion to others. The patience required for sustainable inner child healing cannot be overstated. Jung observed that psychological healing follows natural rhythms that can't be rushed or forced. The inner child may have spent decades learning to hide or protect themselves, and it takes time to build the trust necessary for deep healing to occur. Daily practice involves accepting that some days will feel like progress, and others will feel like setbacks. Some periods will bring insights and breakthroughs, while others will require simply maintaining your commitment to showing up for yourself, even when nothing dramatic seems to be happening. This consistency is itself a form of healing, demonstrating to your inner child that they won't be abandoned again when things get difficult or slow. Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, provides the larger context for inner child healing work. The goal isn't to fix or eliminate the wounded aspects of yourself, but to integrate all parts of your personality into a more complete, authentic expression of who you are. This integration happens gradually, through countless small moments of choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, compassion over criticism, presence over avoidance. Each time you pause to check in with your inner child, each time you respond to emotional triggers with curiosity rather than judgment, each time you honor your needs rather than overriding them, you're contributing to this larger process of becoming whole. The ripple effects of consistent inner child healing extend far beyond personal therapy or self-improvement. Jung observed that individuals who develop conscious relationships with their unconscious patterns become more capable of authentic relationship with others, more creative in their approach to problems, and more resilient in facing life's inevitable challenges. When you learn to treat your own vulnerability with care and respect, you naturally become more capable of holding space for others' vulnerability. When you develop skills for regulating your own emotional responses, you become less reactive and more responsive in relationships. When you learn to trust your inner child's wisdom about what feels safe and authentic, you make choices that are more aligned with your true values and desires. The spiritual dimension of inner child healing often emerges naturally as people develop more conscious relationships with their inner world. Jung observed that the wounded child often carries not just pain, but also connection to wonder, creativity, and what he called the numinous experiences of meaning and transcendence that give life depth and significance. As healing progresses, many people find themselves more capable of joy, more sensitive to beauty, more open to experiences of meaning and connection that may have been suppressed along with their emotional wounds. This isn't a return to childish thinking, but rather an integration of childlike openness with adult wisdom and discernment. The seasonal rhythms of inner child healing mirror the natural cycles that Jung observed throughout his work with patients. There are periods of growth and expansion, followed by periods of integration and rest. There are times when old wounds surface for healing, and times when new capacities emerge. Learning to work with these natural rhythms rather than against them makes the healing process much more sustainable and less overwhelming. Daily practice involves paying attention to these internal seasons and adjusting your approach accordingly. During periods when emotions are intense and memories are surfacing, your practice might involve more gentle, self-soothing and emotional validation. During periods when you feel more stable and integrated, you might explore new forms of creative expression or take on challenges that stretch your comfort zone in healthy ways. The ultimate goal of turning inner child healing into a daily practice isn't to achieve some perfect state of emotional health or to eliminate all traces of your childhood wounds. Jung understood that our wounds, when consciously integrated, often become our greatest sources of wisdom, compassion, and authentic strength. The daily practice approach recognizes that healing is an ongoing relationship with yourself that deepens and evolves throughout your life. Your inner child doesn't need to be fixed. They need to be welcomed into conscious relationship where their needs can be understood, their wounds can be tended, and their gifts can be expressed. This requires developing what Jung called religious attitude toward your own psyche, not necessarily formal religion, but a stance of reverence and respect toward the mystery of your own consciousness and the healing intelligence that operates within you when conditions of safety and attention are provided. As you develop consistency in this practice, you may notice subtle but profound shifts in how you experience daily life. Situations that once triggered overwhelming emotional responses become more manageable. Relationships become more authentic as you become less dependent on others for validation and more capable of genuine intimacy. Creative capacities that may have been suppressed in childhood begin to emerge and flourish. Most importantly, you begin to experience what Jung called conscious living, moving through your days with awareness of your inner world, choice about your responses, and trust in your capacity to handle whatever arises. This doesn't mean life becomes easy or pain-free, but it means you're no longer at the mercy of unconscious patterns from your past. Your inner child has been waiting not for someone else to rescue them, but for you to develop the consciousness and compassion necessary to provide what they've always needed. This doesn't happen through dramatic interventions or perfect techniques. It happens through the accumulation of small, consistent acts of care, attention, and respect for your own emotional reality. The journey of turning inner child healing into a daily practice is ultimately about learning to be a good parent to yourself. This means providing the safety, understanding, patience, and encouragement that every aspect of your personality needs to thrive. It means creating internal conditions where growth and healing can happen naturally, without force or pressure. As Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For those committed to inner child healing, this privilege unfolds through daily choices to honor your complexity, tend to your wounds, and nurture the parts of yourself that are still growing, still becoming, still deserving of love and attention. The practice begins now, in this moment, with whatever small gesture of kindness you can offer to the child within you. Trust that this kindness, repeated daily with genuine intention, has the power to transform not just your relationship with yourself, but every relationship in your life. This is the gift that Jung discovered. When you finally learn to love all parts of yourself, you become capable of loving life in ways that seemed impossible when you were fragmented and at war with your own nature.